It was a quiet night in the Nevada desert. The long highway stretched endlessly under the pale light of the moon. David Lawson, a 34-year-old paramedic, was driving back home after finishing a long and tiring shift. His headlights cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but empty road and endless sand. He was thinking about getting home, making a cup of coffee, and resting his aching back. But something unusual caught his eye in the distance, a faint greenish glow coming from the desert floor, far away from the road. David slowed his truck and squinted through the windshield. At first, he thought it might be a campfire, but the color wasn't right. It wasn't the flicker of flames. It was steady, almost like a soft lamp. He glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, and there shouldn't be anyone out here. His curiosity got the better of him. He turned the steering wheel and drove his truck off the main road, bumping over the rough dirt toward the strange light. The closer he got, the more he could see that the glow wasn't coming from any object. It seemed to be surrounding something, lying on the ground. He parked the truck, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped into the cool desert night. The wind was gentle, but it carried the smell of dry earth and sagebrush. As he approached, his heart began to beat faster. The shape on the ground was small, like a child. David rushed forward, kneeling beside the figure. It was a girl, no older than 7 or 8 by size, but her appearance made him freeze. Her skin was pale with a soft silver shimmer under the moonlight. Her hair was short and almost translucent, as if each strand was made of fine glass. The glow he'd seen came from her skin itself. Her breathing was shallow, her lips slightly parted, and her eyes were closed tightly as if she was in pain. Hey, you're okay," David whispered, though he had no idea if she could even understand him. His medical training took over. He gently checked her pulse. It was weak, irregular. Her body felt cold, far colder than any humans should. He pulled his jacket off and wrapped it around her small frame. When he lifted her into his arms, she was unbelievably light, almost as if she weighed no more than a large bird. As he carried her back to the truck, he noticed something else. Strange, faint markings along her arms and neck. They weren't tattoos, more like natural patterns in her skin, glowing softly in rhythm with her pulse. Once inside the truck, David turned the heater on full blast and began driving toward the nearest medical center. Every so often, the girl made a faint sound, almost like a whisper. At first, he thought it was just a moan of pain, but then he realized it was words. Only not in English. The language was soft, musical, with rising and falling tones he had never heard before. "It's okay," he said again, even though he didn't understand her. "I'll get you some help." The miles felt longer than usual. The road was empty, the darkness pressing in around the truck. David kept glancing at the child in the passenger seat. Her eyes fluttered open for just a second, revealing large, luminous eyes, not the color of any human eye, but a deep shade of violet with tiny flecks of light inside, like distant stars. She looked at him, her gaze steady despite her weakness, then closed them again. David's mind raced. What was she? Where had she come from? He thought about the green light in the desert, the strange patterns on her skin, the unearthly color of her eyes. None of it made sense, but one thing was clear. She was dying, and if he didn't act quickly, she wouldn't make it. When the clinic's small building finally came into view, David felt a rush of relief. He pulled into the parking lot, jumped out, and carried the girl inside. The night nurse on duty looked up in shock as he entered. "What in the world?" she began, but David cut her off. "She's in bad shape, weak pulse, low temperature. I don't know what happened, but she needs help now." The nurse rushed to prepare a bed while David gently laid the girl down. Machines were rolled in, wires attached, but the monitors struggled to pick up readings. The nurse frowned. These numbers don't make sense. Her blood pressure reading is all over the place. David explained quickly about finding her in the desert. The nurse examined the strange patterns on her skin and shook her head. I've never seen anything like this. The girl stirred, her hand twitching slightly. David noticed she was trying to reach into a small satchel that was strapped to her side. Carefully, he opened it and found an odd, smooth device no bigger than a phone. The moment he touched it, the device projected a soft light into the air, forming symbols. Then, as if recognizing him, the symbols shifted into English text. Critical blood loss. Immediate transfusion required. Compatible donor needed. David stared at it, then at the nurse. She looked skeptical but also worried. We don't even know if human blood— I'll do it, David said quickly. Test my blood type. If it's close enough, we try. In that moment, nothing else mattered to him. Not the mystery, not the danger, not the questions. All he knew was that this small, fragile being was fading fast, and he had the power to help. The nurse hesitated, then nodded. All right, let's move. And so began the night that would change David Lawson's life forever. David sat in the small treatment room, watching the nurse prepare the equipment. His hands were resting on his knees, but they wouldn't stay still. He kept glancing toward the bed where the strange child lay. Her breathing was faint, almost, like the quiet rustle of leaves in a breeze. The glow from her skin was dim now, no longer steady, and the patterns on her arms pulsed weakly. The nurse worked quickly, though her face showed worry. She took a small sample of David's blood and inserted it into the device from the child's satchel. The strange tool scanned the sample and projected more glowing symbols in the air. A moment later, those symbols changed to English again. Donor compatible. Transfer possible. David felt a rush of relief but also fear. He had given blood before for human patients. But this was completely different. They didn't know what risks there might be. Still, when he looked at the child's face, so small, so fragile, he knew there was no choice. The nurse set up a manual transfusion. I'll monitor both of you the whole time, she said. If anything feels wrong, you tell me immediately. David nodded. Let's do it. A needle slid into his arm. A tube carried his blood through a filter that hummed softly. Another piece of the alien's strange equipment, and then into the child's arm. At first, there was no change. David kept his eyes on her, hoping, waiting. Then, slowly, the glow in her skin brightened just a little. Her breathing became a bit deeper. The faint patterns on her arms flickered like distant lightning. The nurse's eyes widened. She's stabilizing. David let out the breath he'd been holding, but as the transfusion continued, something unexpected happened. The glowing device from her satchel lit up again, projecting not just symbols but faint shapes, lines of light connecting his image and hers. The lines formed a pattern that looked like two circles merging. What's that supposed to mean? David whispered. The nurse didn't answer. She was focused on keeping the process steady. But the child's eyes slowly opened, revealing those violet irises with star-like flecks. She looked directly at David, as if studying him. For a moment, he felt as if she could see every thought in his mind. Then her lips moved, and the strange musical language came again. I don't understand, he said gently, but the device spoke for her, its calm voice translating, your life in mine, my life in yours. Bound. David frowned in confusion. Bound? What did that mean? He wanted to ask, but her eyelids fluttered, and she drifted into a peaceful sleep. Minutes stretched into an hour. David felt tired, but he stayed still until the nurse finally said, That's enough. She's strong enough to keep going on her own now. She disconnected the tubes and wrapped David's arm. You'll be weak for a while. But you did it. You saved her. The child was resting quietly now. Her glow was stronger, her skin warmer to the touch. She no longer looked like she was slipping away. David felt a quiet satisfaction, mixed with something deeper, a strange connection he couldn't explain. The nurse suggested they keep her in the clinic for observation, but David couldn't help worrying. Whoever, or whatever what she was, someone might be looking for her. He wondered if she was lost or if something had happened to the people she belonged to. Later that night, while the nurse checked on another patient, David sat beside the child's bed. The device was still active, showing soft waves of light above her. Out of curiosity, he placed his hand near hers. Instantly, the patterns shifted and wrapped around his hand like threads of light. The sensation wasn't physical, but he felt it in his mind, like a warm breeze passing through his thoughts. He remembered her words through the translator. Your life in mine. My life in yours. It was strange, but it didn't feel threatening. Instead, it felt peaceful. When morning came, the child woke up. She sat up slowly, her gaze searching until it landed on David. Her lips moved again, and the device translated, David. He blinked in surprise. You know my name? You gave life? She said through the translator. I remember you. He smiled, unsure how to respond. And what's your name? She hesitated, then spoke softly in her own tongue. The translator worked again. Sarai. Sarai, David repeated. The name felt strange in his mouth, but pleasant. Sarai, you're safe now. The girl tilted her head as if studying him again. Safe. With you, the translator said. Before David could ask more, the nurse returned, carrying a clipboard. She's stable, she said, but I think you should stay here for a while until we figure out what to do next. David agreed, though part of him was restless. Something told him this was only the beginning. He didn't know where Sarai had come from or why fate had placed her in his path, but he could feel the weight of it. His blood was now flowing in her veins, keeping her alive. That night, after the nurse went home, David stayed in the clinic to watch over Sarai. The desert outside was silent, the stars glittering like diamonds in the black sky. And somewhere, out there, he thought, someone might be looking for her. He didn't know it yet, but they would arrive much sooner than he expected, and they would not come quietly. 2 nights had passed since David had given his blood to save Sarai's life. She was recovering quickly, far faster than any human child could. By the second morning, she was able to walk around the small clinic room, exploring the equipment with wide, curious eyes. The nurse had never seen anything like her and kept her distance, unsure how to even begin explaining her existence to anyone outside. David stayed close, answering the questions she asked through the translation device. She wanted to know about Earth, about the strange machines humans used, about why the sun here felt warmer than the one she knew. David was careful with his answers, still trying to understand her himself. She never mentioned where she came from in detail, but sometimes her eyes would turn sad when she looked out the window at the night sky. On the 3rd night, everything changed. David was sitting in the clinic lounge with a cup of coffee, the desert. Outside, wrapped in silence. Sarai was resting in her bed. The nurse had gone home early, trusting David to watch over the child. That was when the light appeared. Not the soft green glow he had seen before, but a sudden, brilliant flash that lit up the whole room. David rushed to the window. In the sky above the desert, a huge shadow moved against the stars. At first, he thought it was a cloud, but then he realized it was solid, and it was moving closer. His heart pounded. The craft was massive, shaped like a smooth silver disc, with no visible lights except for a faint shimmer along its edges. Without making a sound, it descended toward the desert floor just beyond the clinic. The air seemed to vibrate, though. There was no noise. David felt the hairs on his arms stand up. He turned to check on Sarai and saw her standing by the window, staring at the craft with an expression he had never seen on her before. Relief. Recognition. "They're here," the translation device whispered. David's mouth went dry. "Who's here?" Before she could answer, the ground outside was bathed in a column of white light. Figures began to appear within it, descending as if walking on invisible steps. They were tall, at least a head taller than David, with the same luminous skin and patterned markings as Sarai. Their movements were calm, graceful, almost like they were gliding. At their center was a woman unlike any David had ever seen. She wore a flowing garment that seemed woven from strands of light itself, shifting colors with every movement. Her eyes were a deeper violet than Sarai's, and her expression was powerful yet warm. Even before she spoke, David knew this was Sarai's mother. Sarai ran to the door before David could stop her. He followed, stepping out into the cool night air. The woman's gaze locked onto him immediately. She walked forward with quiet authority, the other figures staying behind, her like an honor guard. When she reached him, she spoke in her musical language. David didn't understand, but the translation device picked up her words. "You have given life to my child. You have given a part of yourself. For this, I honor you." David swallowed, unsure what to say. I just did what anyone would do." Her eyes softened, but her tone was steady. "Not anyone. Only one. You." Behind her, the tall figures stood perfectly still, their eyes watching him closely. David could feel the weight of their gaze, not hostile, but measuring. The woman reached out, placing her hand lightly over his chest. The touch was warm, almost electric. "Your blood flows in her now. Our bond is sealed." David glanced at Sarai, who was smiling up at her mother. "I'm just glad she's safe," he said quietly. The woman straightened. "You do not yet understand the meaning of what you have done, but you will." David wanted to ask what she meant, but in that moment, something strange happened. The air between them shimmered, and for a brief second, he saw flashes in his mind. Towering silver cities under skies with 3 moons, forests glowing with blue light, oceans reflecting constellations he had never seen before. The images were so vivid that he stumbled back, gasping. The woman watched him carefully. "Now you have seen our home." He rubbed his eyes. "What? How?" "It is the bond," she said simply. "You are connected now. To her. To us." David's head was spinning. He had saved Sarai's life, yes, but he had never imagined it would lead to something like this. And yet, deep down, some part of him felt that whatever was happening was far bigger than he could have guessed. The woman turned to Sarai, speaking softly in their own language. Sarai nodded and took her mother's hand. Then the woman looked back at David. "We will speak again, soon." With that, she and her people began to move back toward the white column of light. In seconds, they were gone, lifted silently into the waiting craft, which rose into the sky without a sound and disappeared among the stars. David stood frozen in the doorway long after the light faded. The desert was quiet again, but nothing felt the same. He had the uneasy feeling that his life was no longer just his own. And he was right. The next time Sarai's mother returned, she would come with a request that would change everything. 3 days passed after the night Sarai's mother and her people appeared outside the clinic. The desert felt different to David now. Every time he stepped outside, he found himself scanning the sky, half expecting to see that silver disk shimmering above the horizon again. He couldn't stop thinking about the images her mother had somehow placed in his mind. The alien cities, the glowing forests, the oceans under strange moons. Sarai stayed at the clinic with him during those days. She was stronger now, able to laugh and talk more. She asked questions about human life, and David asked about hers, though she often gave only small answers. It wasn't because she didn't trust him. It was because, as she explained, her people believed certain truths could only be told at the right time. That right time came sooner than David expected. On the fourth evening, just as the sun was sinking behind the desert hills, the sky lit up again. The familiar white beam touched down not far from the clinic. David felt his pulse quicken. He glanced at Sarai, and she gave him a small nod as if she'd known they were coming. The same tall, graceful figures stepped from the beam, but this time there were more of them. And once again, at the center, walked Sarai's mother. She moved with the same quiet authority, but her expression tonight was even more serious. David stepped forward to greet her, unsure if he should bow or shake hands. She stopped in front of him, her violet eyes studying him closely. Then she spoke in her language, and the translation device came to life. "It is time we speak of the bond." David nodded slowly. "I'm listening." "You saved Sarai's life by giving her your blood," she said. "Among my people, this is not only an act of mercy, it is the creation of a life bond. Your essence now lives within her. And because she is of the royal line, that bond is sacred." David shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know about your customs. I just couldn't let her die." Her gaze didn't waver. "Intent does not change the bond. On my world, when such a bond is formed, the one who gave life must join their path with ours. It is our way to honor the connection, to ensure the survival of the shared essence." David frowned. "Join your path? What does that mean?" She took a slow step closer. "It means becoming part of our lineage. It means uniting our kinds, so that what began in the desert will not end here." The words hung in the air like heavy clouds. David felt the weight of them. "You're asking me to live with your people?" "I am asking you to take a place in our family," she replied. "To walk among us, to share your life with us as we will with you. This is our law, and this is my request as a mother who owes you more than words can repay." David didn't answer right away. His mind was spinning. Part of him was drawn to the thought, the chance to see that world, to understand a civilization unlike anything on Earth. But another part of him thought about his home, his friends, the life he had built here. Leaving all that behind for a culture he barely understood seemed impossible. "I don't know if I can do that," he admitted finally. The tall guards behind her shifted slightly, not in a threatening way, but as if they felt the tension. Her expression softened, though her voice remained steady. "You do not need to answer tonight, but understand this. The bond is not only a tradition, it is real. Already your life and hers are linked. When she grows, your blood will still flow in her. When you feel a change in your body, it may be because she feels it too. Our histories are tied now, whether you accept it or not." David looked at Sarai. She stood quietly beside her mother, her small hands clasped in front of her. Her gaze was calm, but there was something hopeful in her eyes. "Why is this so important to you?" he asked. Her mother took a slow breath. "Because our kind is rare in the universe. Our royal line is rarer still. Bonds like this have happened only a handful of times in our history. Each one shaped the future of our people. You have done something that cannot be undone, and with it comes a choice to strengthen the connection, or to let it fade until it is only a memory. I hope you will choose the first." David didn't know what to say. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of the beam of light in the distance. Finally, her mother stepped back. "We will return soon for your answer. Until then, you will feel the bond. You will dream of our world. You will know that this is more than chance." With that, she placed her hand gently on his shoulder, a touch that sent another wave of visions through his mind. This time, he saw not just cities and oceans, but people smiling, offering him food, walking with him beneath glowing trees. For a moment, it felt real, as if he was already there, and then it was gone. The tall figures turned, guiding her back toward the beam. Sarai looked at him one last time before following. "Soon," she said softly, the translator repeating the word in English. The light swallowed them, and the desert was silent again. David stood in the fading warmth of the evening, the images still fresh in his mind. He knew she was right about one thing. The bond was real. He could feel it now, like a faint thread running from his heart into the stars. And he also knew that whatever choice he made, it would change the course of his life forever. The days after Sarai's mother left were unlike anything David had ever experienced. He went back to his small house on the edge of the desert, thinking he might find comfort in his familiar routine. But nothing felt the same. Every morning, when he woke, his first thought was of Sarai. Every night, before sleep, he saw flashes of her world, visions that felt too real to be dreams. Sometimes he would be doing something ordinary, like pouring coffee or watering the plants, and suddenly a sensation would pass through him. Warmth, like sunlight on his face, or the sound of soft laughter echoing in his mind. He began to realize these moments were connected to Sarai. Somehow, across the distance between them, the bond her mother had spoken about was alive. In the evenings, David would step outside and look up at the stars. The desert air was cool, the silence deep, but he never felt completely alone. He could almost sense eyes watching him from far away, not in a frightening way, but in a way that made him feel both cared for and expected. One night, as he sat on his porch, the translation device from the clinic suddenly lit up on the table beside him. It had been quiet for days, but now it projected a soft glow. Words appeared, "We return tomorrow." David's heart skipped. Tomorrow. The decision he'd been avoiding could no longer wait. He had spent days weighing his options. On one hand, there was his life here, the familiar world he understood, the people he cared about, the safety of what he knew. On the other hand, there was a world unlike any other, a chance to see and live among beings from beyond the stars, to be part of something larger than himself. But this wasn't just about adventure. He knew the bond was real. He could feel it every time Sarai's presence brushed against his thoughts. He had saved her life, and now she was part of his in a way that went beyond anything human words could explain. The next evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky lit up once more. The silver craft appeared, silent and majestic, descending with the same shimmering light as before. The beam touched the desert floor, and figures emerged. This time there were fewer guards. At the center stood Sarai and her mother. David walked toward them, his boots crunching in the sand. Sarai's face lit up when she saw him, and she ran forward, stopping just short of throwing her arms around him. "You came," she said through the translator. "I said I'd see you again," David replied with a smile. Her mother stepped closer, her eyes searching his. "The time has come," she said. "Have you chosen?" David hesitated. For a moment he looked past her at the stars, so bright above the desert. Then he took a deep breath. "I have." She waited, silent, her expression unreadable. "I can't pretend to understand everything about your people," he began. "And I don't know what will happen if I come with you. But I know the bond is real. I feel it every day. I saved Sarai because it was the right thing to do, but somehow, that moment tied our lives together. If that means I'm meant to be part of your world, Then I'm willing to try. For the first time, Sarai's mother's expression softened into a full smile. You honor us, she said, and you will not walk alone. David glanced at Sarai, who was beaming. Will it be forever? He asked quietly. The mother tilted her head. Forever is not the same for us as it is for you, but the bond will last as long as life itself. David nodded slowly. Then, I'm ready. She extended her hand. David took it, and the moment their palms touched, another wave of visions rushed through his mind. But this time, they weren't just images. He felt the scent of alien air, the sound of water under 3 moons, the hum of a city alive with voices. It wasn't just showing him. It was welcoming him. Come, she said. The 3 of them walked toward the column of light. As they stepped, inside, David looked back one last time at the desert, the small clinic, the life he had known. Then he turned forward. The beam lifted them into the silver craft. The interior was vast and filled with a soft light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Other beings watched him with calm curiosity, some bowing slightly as they passed. Sarai stayed close, her small hand slipping into his. You'll like it there, she said softly. David smiled faintly. I think I already do. The craft rose, higher, the desert shrinking below. Through a wide, clear panel, David saw the stars spread out in every direction, brighter than he had ever imagined. He realized then that his world had just grown 1,000 times larger. And as the ship turned toward the dark stretch of space where Sarai's home waited, David felt no fear, only the strange, deep certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be.